States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now call to order the special meeting of July 23rd, 2024. I'll take this opportunity to welcome everyone and thank you for being here. I don't see any citizens here, so I'll skip over the part about public comment, and we'll just jump right in. Our first item is to review the 2024-2025 tentative budget for all funds, and Dr. Legutko will be making that presentation.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. I thought Dr. Daly was going to speak first. Okay, so we are going to go over the tentative budget and the required local millage for the upcoming school year. The purpose of this meeting is primarily to approve the advertisement that I am going to go over with you so that I can place it in the newspaper for the taxpayers to understand, what their taxes are going to be for, their property tax will be for the upcoming year. So, with that, let's get started. You all have the presentation in front of you. Hopefully, the PowerPoint will be much clearer than some of the small numbers, but if you do have any questions, please, by all means, ask me and we can provide that information. Okay. Do I have there you go. Okay, it's not working. Sorry. Technical difficulties, first thing in the morning, I'm sorry. Try it again. Hit the enter or the carry forward. Is that even not working? Okay, let's go through the book. I'm sorry, everybody does not have a copy of the book, so we have to wait. I do apologize. In the meantime, I'll take a swig of water.
I wanted to make sure all the board members are signed in because we will be voting on these items. You're all good on your computers? I meant to do that before we started.
It was stuck. Okay. A lot of these slides that we will go through is going to be really simple, quick, to the point. There are some that I will spend a little more time on. So, like this one, of course, you all know who you are, so we'll just move on. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, this is a slide that represents our budget process. And you've seen this slide before where it talks about the budget is a continuous process. We start off with planning and preparation. That means we plan for what we are expected to spend in the new fiscal year. There are lots of things that, lots of items that we discuss as a team to ensure that we have enough resources to support those activities. So with that, that's part of the planning. Of course, you remember as a board, you did approve the allocation document, which represents the number of teachers, the number of staff that we do support throughout the school year. So that's part of the planning and the preparation. So as you notice, the two is the planning, preparation, and adoption. Those are the three steps we are in the process of completing right now. So, and like I said, it's a continuous process. It is done constantly. The budget changes every day, every second, if we can go past second, I will tell you that too. So, you know, it's pretty much continuously changing, because there's revenues coming in, there are expenditures going out, so it's a continuous process. And it ends in September when the district receives the final calculations from the Department of Education that tells us how much money we actually received for that fiscal year. So, and think about it, September of the year that we've already finished. So, and we've started a new year. So I started to put a slide there with a crystal ball because it's like really hard to tell what's going to happen in the future, but we do have to plan for it. So, okay. As you know, the reason for this meeting again is to ensure that we approve the tentative advertisements. However, part of it is called, what we go through, TRIM, Truth in Millage, which is pretty much setting the millage rates for our taxpayers to understand the value of the taxes that they are going to be paying to support the school district. As you know, when you do get your tax bill, it has a lot of other taxing agencies on there. You've got the, if you live in Orange Park, I guess the town of Orange Park, you've got Green Cove, City of Green Cove, you also have Clay County, which the roads, those other areas. Not only that, you should also see the school district. So there are multiple taxing agencies that the local taxpayers do pay in order to support the agencies. So with that, we have to follow a strict deadline that requires us to follow these steps. And this really is our timeline where, of course, we start off in January with our projections and move on throughout the school year before June 30th to ensure that we have a balanced budget to support the next upcoming school year. And you can see a lot of these are driven by statutory guidelines. So, and they're there for you to review in your reading, for your reading pleasure. All right, so right now we are actually here in July where we're doing the TRIM newspaper advertisement. Okay. Like I said, I talked about the other taxing agencies. This is what we all have to go through. So I wanted the taxpayers to know the process that we are going through. It is statutorily required, and it is a process that starts from the beginning. In July 1st starts the clock, and then it goes all the way to September. In between, you get the tax note. We set the millage rates. You get the notification through mail, and then, of course, you pay your taxes in November, but you can pay it early if you want. Okay. All right, as we talk about the millage rates, I wanted to just give a little history of Clay County's millage rates. And as you can see, this is a 20-year historical view of it. And you can see we started off with 5.215, and it's gone down to 2.98. What does that mean? That means that we're getting less and less of property tax dollars to support education. This is the first year that I have seen, and you'll hear me say this again, where this millage rate here, local tax millage rate, is less than the rollback rate, which is really sad in my opinion, because of course I am the CFO and money does drive the education. So, but I wanted to show you the significance of how it has constantly dropped, and look at the amount of dollars that we're generating and the difference between the year before, $16 million extra we generated last year, to what we're generating this year, about 4.9 million. So it's a significant difference, and of course I think it's just leveling out. As you can see, if you look at the history, you'll see there very few times you'll see that large amount there, but it goes up and down, so it's like,
And the numbers, if I may ask a
Yes.
quick question, in the after the total dollars generated, in the right-hand column, those in the Parentheses means that that was money that was not generated?
No, it means it's the difference between the prior year. So for this one, we generated $70 million. The next year it was 67 million, so we lost dollars here. I think property values might have dropped a little bit there. But when you see an increase, even though it's not significant, it is because the property values went up. Look at the total assessed values. That's what's driving the increases to our taxes.
But that's dependent on the rollback rate. I mean, so we still, on this, according to what I'm looking at, is nearly $5 million more, right?
Yeah, we're generating 5 million more than what we did last year, and that is because of our property values.
And so even though taxpayers are paying less because we have so much growth, we're still $5 million more, right?
Yeah, because of the value of our properties.
Yeah, additional
Yeah.
sales,
If it's-
additional homes.
Well, a lot of
there's a
people have
slide
questions
that-
about this.
Yeah, I know.
Especially when it's like the required local effort.
Right.
Because if you talk to people, and honestly, if you just peruse and read newspapers, you see that most people think that the taxes are more, we pay more taxes. So what I was trying to, I guess, simplify it, is that no, we're paying less, but because of the vast amount of growth we have, we are able to pay less and still get more. That's kind of the relationship.
Well, and I think the misunderstanding is that the percentage, the millage is less, but the dollar amount that the
Yes.
taxpayer is paying is more.
Yeah.
Because their property is worth more than it was last year.
Because it's worth more, but not because of something that
Correct.
we set.
Right.
Yeah.
But
No.
And that is where the confusion lies with a lot of.
Absolutely.
Right. You get a homestead exemption, but then there are people who own property that they don't live in, and you don't get the homestead
Not
exemption,
homestead.
so it's more significant
Yeah,
for them, for sure.
thank you.
Okay. So this is the difference between, this slide just talks about what we did last year. The millage rate was 6.404, that includes all of the millage rates. And then, of course, you've got this year where it did go down by 0.017. And of course, this is the calculation. So as you were speaking about the value of our mill, if your home stayed the same this year as compared to last year, so if your property didn't increase at all, your value does not increase, and you paid this millage rate as compared to the last year's millage rate, you would save, on a $200,000 value, you would save $34. You would pay less tax. But because your value went up for this
Right.
year, the difference is where that increase is coming from. Okay? Okay. This is just another summary. It kind of breaks down exactly where the money is being generated. The required RLE, required local effort, which is the requirement that the districts must levy. Every state, every school district is different depending on your property values and your community dynamics. Our basic discretionary is 0.748, that's the amount it should generate. And the capital outlay, the 1.50, about 30 million. Additional voted, the 1.0 is about 20 million. You can see what the total dollars are. And like I said, the current year, the rollback rate, the 6.234, I'm trying to remember, the 6.234 is more than the rollback rate. I'm sorry, take that back. The 6.234 is less than the rollback rate. But as a percentage, it's actually 1.54% over. What that means is that as a result of that, by law, we have to advertise a tax increase. The percentage is higher, but the value is less, okay? Another thing that needs to be understood is that although I'm going to generate about 127 million, because of sometimes we don't collect all of those funds, not everyone pays their taxes. We do, the state requires us to only budget 96% of our dollars, which will equate to $122.6 million. Yes. Any questions on this slide?
Can I ask one question about
Yes,
that?
go ahead.
You didn't have to go back if you don't want, but
Yeah.
let's say they collect 98.2%. What happens with the extra millions if they do collect more than 96%?
Yay for us, it's ours.
And so what is our history on that?
Our history, we have been close to about 96, 97%. We've been averaging about that. What helps us at the end of the year is the tax sales. At the end of the year, we receive the, what is that, the tax sales. They do something that they sell off those properties that are, did not pay, I guess, their taxes. And we receive about $1 million, close to $1 million, not as much. It's been increasing each year, but that $1 million goes towards the total tax. So it's been around 96. What puts us over is the
So it's not a 4% loss. There are other ways to mitigate part of that.
Oh, yes. But to ensure that we have the required amount of dollars, the state requires us to only budget for 96, so we stay within that parameter, so we learn to work within those dollars to support the activities. Okay. We talk about the rollback millage rates, right? As you know, again, I have to speak about the rollback rate. That is required by law from TRIM. They require me to speak to that. So I would say the most important thing on this slide is really that the total millage rate levied exceeds the rollback rate computed by 1.54. It's over the rollback rate percentage because, like I said, the percentage is higher because of the value, but it is less than the rollback rate. What that means is that if you take the current taxable year, which was the $19 billion that you saw on that other slide, the county, of course, takes a few other adjustments, fees, additions, different types of expenditures. They minus that out. That becomes your adjustable taxable value. That's about $19.7 billion. If you really want to do the calculation, I'm going to tell you what that is, so the public out there can do this calculation. So you take that $19.9 million that's on that top value. The rollback rate was 6.140. You multiply that, and you'll get 62.7 million. If you go back, and I just want everyone to understand this. Here is about what you take about the 60 and the 14, you add those two together, it's about $70 million, $74 million. Take those two. When you multiply it by the rollback rate, you would generate about the same amount as this number, right? That's about, what, 70? When you add these two, it's less than that. So if we were to adopt a rollback rate, we will collect less dollars than what we are projecting for this year. And basically, the rollback rate is that amount of dollars that you will generate from last year. You'll generate it this year, if that is what you decide to adopt, that rollback rate, which would be the 6.140, not the 6.234. Okay? Does everybody understand that? Yes. Okay. Just have to make sure that is very clear to everyone.
I have a question. Is this the same rollback rate that if we don't adopt, we lose state funding over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because the entire amount of dollars, and I'll show you that one, the entire amount is based on state funding and local funding. So the large amount, our 300 and X budget for general fund, is generated based on funds coming in from our local taxes and the state dollars that they provide to us.
I think people don't understand that though too, that if we don't adopt that, then we actually lose money.
Yes.
By not adopting that. So I think that's very important to say out loud.
Yeah, not only that, it's not just the, well, there are areas within the state fund that's also reduced. Everything that's affected, the formula to provide to us will be reduced by that amount as well. So we lose a significant amount of money. Okay, so, all right, so this is the most important of this whole entire show. I call it a show because I am presenting. Anyway, again, these are the advertisement that will appear in our newspaper. It is, of course, the notice of the proposed tax increase. And you can see we're telling the taxpayers this is our initial last year's property taxes and what this year property tax will be. This is the amount we are going to generate from our local property taxes. If we do not generate at least this amount of money, or at least 96% of these funds, we stand to lose $251 million. Whatever the percentage that we decide that we will levy would be the value or the percentage this number will become. So again, the reduction of the funding, if we don't generate and levy this value, we lose some of these dollars. Okay, that's one of the odds that will be in there. This is the overall budget. As you know, our budget consists of multiple funds: general fund, special revenue, debt service, and capital projects. Our main operating budget is the general fund. It generates about almost $500 million here, which includes fund balance. So our expenditures are about $389 million in the general fund. This supports everything that operates the school system day to day. Salaries, benefits, contracts, you name it, we do it. So, this is the special revenue. The special revenue includes our food service department, our grants. Grants meaning our special grants such as Title I, Title II, Title III, IDEA, workforce, those types of grants that we have in our system. There's multiple. And it also includes the CARES, ESSER, ARP funds, all of those funds. Okay? Our debt service is really our debt that we have for building schools. As you know, we just took out a $50–60 million bond. This payment here represents that payment as well as a payment for our bus lease. And you'll see the details of that later on in the budget presentation. This amount is really generated from the capital projects. It's a transfer in. So you can see the transfer right here, transfer in, transfer out. The transfer in represents the 6.2 that we transfer out from the capital projects to support.
The wrong ad.
Huh?
You gave Bonnie the wrong PowerPoint.
Oh. Oh, crap. Sorry.
But we've got the right one in there.
The one in the book is correct.
So I have a question.
We need the right one. Where is the one?
I just sent it to her.
Stuck again. What's my
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Total debt services, you said, is everything?
control?
Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's the payment to the,
Oh, it's just the payment.
yeah, the annual payment. And you'll see a breakdown of that in another slide.
So our total budget is 660 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Total budget,
And
660.
I have a question while we're on a little pause here. I know how much we make legislatively dictated, but the school board's expenses are $1.5 million. What exactly does that include?
Oh, that includes, hold on, and we will get to that. We will get
Are
to
you
that.
going to break that down?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Every
Yeah,
year.
we are going to go into
It comes up
details.
every year.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I think it's important that
No, it is, yes.
that everyone understand that.
It's not a slush fund. Which is exactly how it's.
Which one are we talking about? Because if you minus what we make, there's a lot left over.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I will explain exactly what that is. And keep in mind, this is a budget. A lot of times, we have to park dollars in certain areas. For instance, we have about $2 million, about $2 million that's sitting, that supports terminal pay. You know, those folks that
Yeah.
leave throughout the year, we've got to pay them out their vacation, sick
Right.
leave, those types of things. Well, I don't know where those folks are coming from. So as you've heard me talk about Red Book. Red Book is our chart of accounts from the Department of Education that tells us how we are supposed to report all of these expenditures. But because we don't know what those expenditures are at this point, we have to park it and say, okay, let's set it here as a savings account and move it when the expense happens. The board sees these transfers throughout the school year when I bring you all budget amendments. And so right now, it may be sitting in maybe 5,000 function code under salaries and benefits. But it could be under a cost center 9,000, which represents the board, or a district cost center. When that happens, it starts off from a budget perspective. The initial budget, it would be very high. But then throughout the year, we transfer those funds to the appropriate function and object codes. And that's when you really see the true expenditures and what happens to those dollars. Like I said, think of it as a savings for, not even a savings, a restricted account that no one else can touch that money because it's specific for that purpose. We set it aside to ensure that we can support those expenditures when they do happen. Okay? Do we have the right one there?
We do.
Okay, thank you. I do apologize for this. We've been working on this so much these last few days because of the state sending the lateness of the certification. So that is why there's some reiteration of this. So anyway, yes. Our total budget is about $660.8 million. I wish it was billion. Billion? Oh my God, it would be wonderful.
Salaries would be very.
$1 million. And I talked about the transfers. You'll see the detail of what that transfer represent. And about 51.9 is our fund balance. But that includes every one of the funds, okay, except debt service. Debt service is part of capital. Just like I'll speak about our self-insurance programs. Those are part of the general fund. So it's also an expense in the general fund, okay?
Dr. Legutko, and it's okay if you don't know this off the top of your head, but I'm just wondering, where does that, the fund balance at 51.9, where does that leave us percentage-wise?
51 is about probably, what is that, 5 over the 5, it's probably, I don't know, 8, 9, 10%. But keep in mind, this is restricted and unrestricted. It has everything in it.
Right.
Our actual projected fund balance is expected, hopefully, if everything goes well, about 5% is the unrestricted. But that is everything. What's 51.9 over total revenue? What percentage is that? She'll tell you.
But that's okay, I don't need to know. That's okay.
Okay, this is the next ad that you will see. It's a notice of tax capital outlay. What this represents, of course, is the dollars that's being generated with the 1.5 mils. We, as a taxing agency, must report how we expect to spend those funds. We may not do all of these projects because things happen throughout the year where we've got to change. But because of this, the district tries to place every and any type of expenditures that could possibly happen, for this $1.5 million. So you'll see it's one of the larger ads that we have in the newspaper. And here is the dollar that we will generate. This coincides with the $1.5 million that we're generating, and these are the project numbers associated with those projects. And you can see these are all the projects. we've got regular construction, maintenance and renovations, motor vehicle, this is where we do pay for certain, the purchase of maintenance vehicles. This is our software program, BP and any other software programs that we purchase. This is where we're paying back the note. Remember I said about the transfer? This is how we are required to pay it. We do have to list it, and we do it as a transfer from an accounting perspective. Our premiums, this is our liability insurance. Statutory, we are allowed to pay for that expense through this fund, these funds.
Do you remember when the lease, when the lease will be up on these 100 buses?
I believe it's 1 more year.
Okay.
We have. And you'll see it on my schedule.
There's a slide, right?
I believe it's 1 more year, or, yes, 1 more year,
2026.
yes.
And Dr. Lococo, the reason the list is so, this is just, I do understand this, but if it's not on the list, we would not be able to do it, right? That's the way that works.
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
It has to be listed, that's why we list almost everything, right?
Right, yes.
You
but
can't
you'll
operate
see-
outside of this list,
Yes,
Using the millage money.
okay,
the
let me,
millage money, I mean.
correct. But let's go
Yeah.
on more and you'll see, it'll make sense after with the amended, report.
And Dr. Legato, this does not include the additional voted mill, correct?
No.
This is
No.
just the 1.5?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And getting to your point, if it's not on the list, the law requires us to submit an amended notice. So any change that happens throughout the year that was not originally advertised, we as a district have to place an amended notice, which is what this is, showing the taxpayers, this is what we deviated, this is what we did throughout the year that was not on our original list, but here are the things that it impacted.
And it also requires a public hearing?
Yes, it's one of the advertisements. So it's part of our process through TRIM.
So
So this is one of the,
For the voted mill, do you have to advertise for that, what the projects will be for this year for that, or was that?
No.
So that's just the one time when it's originally voted on?
the voted mill, meaning the 1.0? Yes, no, we don't, because it is part of the general fund.
Okay.
The voted mill, the 1.00 is general fund. It's like your local taxes you'll pay. It's not your 1.5 mil. So what we're showing here, hold on, I'm sorry. What we're showing here, as far as the breakdown, this is the general fund. Everything in here is what is required for advertisement. So we're saying that out of the local sources, $107 million. This includes other things, but the part that I am having to, I have to show is this. Out of the $127 million that we are levying, this is how much I'm going to generate. It does not require me to say specifically how those dollars, each item, how it's supposed to be spent, but I share that with you in a detailed presentation later on. But this is my requirement to show, this is Red Book requirements, that I'm going to spend approximately $260 million under instruction. Instruction under Red Book represents instructional services, salaries, benefits, everything for the schools, everything that really deals with the students in our schools. And you'll see there's a description of what every one of these things mean, so that you can identify, go back and say, okay, out of instruction, you're paying for salaries, you're paying for benefits, you're paying for travel, you're paying for instructional materials, you're paying for programs, software programs that supports the schools. Everything, is in there. It's a lot of information. So. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. I know I'm taking a lot of time, but these are the most important part of this presentation, that I received your approval to advertise these 4 advertisements. And again, we talk about the amended notice. If the projects aren't in the current original at the end of the year, when I'm taking the next trim notice, I am required to show what was different from the prior year through this notice. All right, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. Anyone needs to stand up and do the turnaround? I know this is not very interesting, but it is interesting, at least in my world. All right, so we're going to talk about each of the funds and what they represent. This is more of a, I would say, of high level, but yet we are still going into some details of the major areas. And of course, any questions that you have, please reach us. Okay, all right. So what is the general fund supports? You can see right there, everybody knows, well, I should say everybody in this room should know what we spend our general funds on. We spend it on curriculum, professional development, technology, health insurance, all of those things that operate our school system, okay? And again, it is based, all of the accounting or the reporting requirements is based on our red book. It is the accounting standards. It's our chart of accounts that we are required to account for these expenditures. And this red book is actually available on the DOE website. I even have the website if anyone needs it, but I'll say it out loud, www.fldoe.org. And you just go under finance and you'll see all of our accounting workbooks that we are required to report under. Okay, I'm going to go a little fast now. This just represents the total amount of our revenue sources and of course our fund balance. You can see the larger blue is the state dollars and the rest is, different. The local is the red and the little pieces are those other funding sources, other financing sources.
I got a question. Those other financing sources, those are loans?
No.
Or what is this?
No, the 6 million is the transfer in from capital, and the 3.4 is federal dollars, like Medicaid funding.
So the yellow is still one of the three?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, it's part of the transfer in from the capital funds, coming to the general
State
fund.
or federal, okay.
Yeah, so state is the 298, the dark blue.
Right,
The red is the local.
right.
And the green is the federal grants, well, it's Medicaid, those types of funds that do come into the school district. And the yellow is the transfer in from capital dollars.
Which still is, okay.
Yeah, you can tell there's a lot of funding that comes in that supports the entire operation of the school district. It's not just the state dollars, it's not just the FEFP, which is part of the state. There's other things that do come in, and you'll see that in the slide that I have here. All right, this is a breakdown of really our revenues. And just as we were speaking about the different types of funding that makes up the general fund, you can see, here's the local. These are the different things that come in to support our overall budget. Not only do you have the property tax, remember I talked about the tax redemptions at the end of the year, the sale of the tax in front of the courthouse, that sort of stuff. That's where these funds come in. So like I said, we try to generate at least the 96% there. The rest of it is actually other things like interest on our investments. We do place our dollars in SBA, and throughout the year it sits there, and if we do get some interest, that's wonderful. It's starting to go up, so I like that. Gifts, grants, we get a few, little grants here and there, so we do try to budget some dollars in there. And all of these things are budgeted based on prior year's revenues. So it's really hard to tell what you're going to get from some of these these grants and things that do come in throughout the school district. In our district. Educational fees, these are fees that are paid by the adult education program. So we are required to report on those and receive those funds in the school system. And it is part of the accounting of all revenues coming in. Our lease rent is about $600,000. Those are the rentals for like YMCA, at the after-school programs. I mean, that money is going to the school, a part of it is going to the school, but it does come in to offset the cost of the rentals and the positions that are supporting those after-school activities.
Going back to educational fees, that's a huge proposed. Are we expecting a large increase?
Well, it also includes the pre-K.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying between the unaudited and audited, it's still a nice jump. So-
Yeah, I mean, from what we're looking at, we believe we would probably generate at least that much. And I believe even with the adult program, they're expanding a lot of the activities that they're doing. So I believe it may generate a little
And
more.
also, our Montessori program is
Yeah.
expanding.
Yeah, the Montessori is also in there. And that is also, I think this is our 3rd year in the Montessori. So each year it progresses up to the next level. So, and I believe they decided the fees they do pay for some of those services. Okay, then the next part of it is the state revenue. And I talked about what the FEFP. The FEFP is a combination of the state and the state dollars. So we will generate about $256 million just in FEFP. That's based on the BSA, base student allocation, which is based on the projected FTE that we projected in January. So think about that. I'm thinking in January I'm going to have these many kids, but come July, August, we don't know. It could be less than what I projected or it could be more. It's always great when it's more, but we just don't know. So it's all of a projection of what we will receive, and the state funds us based on that.
Well,
Then
What was the number that we projected, just out of curiosity?
about 40,000 students.
40,000 still, okay.
Yeah, 40,000 FTE, and that represents our students. It also, I shouldn't say it this way. It represents charters, it represents traditional schools, charter schools, and anything extra that we're supposed to. Virtual, yes, virtual.
How does, if I go back to this pie chart, how does this relate to this pie chart?
Okay, the blue,
Because this says estimated 452.
Well, that ties back to the ad. The pie chart includes both Fund 105, the additional mill, and Fund 100.
This is strictly general fund.
This is strictly just general Fund 100, without the additional mill money. Because we're getting about $20 million
in mill.
in the additional mill.
When you're looking at this chart, that chart represents all of us. So the blue part,
It ties back to this part of the ad.
Yeah, I understand that.
the blue part of this is this section here. Not include, the mill money is general fund, local taxes. It's going to be part of here, minus out 19 million from the original number I gave you, and this is what you have. So if you take this number here and you add, let me forward on, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just go ahead and forward on. Okay. You add this number, which is the mill. This is only the mill money. I just broke it out so that the taxpayers can see how much the mill dollar generates, how much the general fund generates. If we were to not have the mill money, this would never even be in this presentation. So I broke it out. But by law, because the mill money is general fund dollars, I have got to put it in the ad as one fund, as part of general fund.
I understand, I was
Yeah.
just looking at the pie chart, which is about 415 million, and then it said the total
Yeah.
other financings were 452 million. I just, there wasn't anything on here to explain why they were different numbers. And so
Right.
that's why.
Well, and I think one of the things is, again, like I said, this piece of it represents the diving into the meat and potatoes of it. The general fund, the mill, all of those are separated in our account. When you look at our financial statements and our budget amendments, when I present to you every month, you can see, I break it also out so that you can see the monies generated by the mill by itself, by general fund, and, so you can make a comparison.
So the larger amount of money on the left side of this pie chart is all of these things combined?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and you can see the federal, remember I said it was about 3,425, you can
Yeah.
link it back to the federal. This number here, you can link it back to the state revenues. And these are the different types, but even though it's not the same amount as what the FEFP would generate, we do get other dollars coming in, but we have to identify it by the source, which is either federal, local, or state. Okay, so now we're going to get into the expenditure part of it. The categories, of course, like I said, I was speaking to you, I said instruction, instructional support, the general support, community service, and non-program charges. This is more debt service, but these are the different function codes that is driven by Red Book. So the 5,000 represents all of our instructional, but then it breaks it down even further by 5,100, by even additional numbers. So you've got 5,100, 5,200, 53. Those items represents the type of positions they are. 5,100 are basic instruction folks. 5,200 is ESE. Those are ESE teachers. 5,300 are, what is that? CTE, those types of positions. 5,500 are those positions that are pre-K, the pre-K programs, because 5,500 does not generate any FTE. So the money that's generated from the 5,500, even though we've got to report it here, is generated from the local coalition. The money goes to them and then they send it to us. Okay, so I just want that all to be clear, but the main function is primarily the 5,000 where 51, 52, 53, those are the key functions. 6,400, the 600 is the instructional support. There's a lot of different things that happen out of that function. There's instructional materials, which is 6,200. You've got professional development, 6,400. So identifying those types of expenditures is what we do. We've got to make sure that we report those things appropriately. Otherwise, then we are misrepresenting our expenditures and our revenues, and that is a problem. Okay. Okay. So this is really showing you the expenditures by function, what I just went over. So the 5,000, and here's the historical. Now keep in mind, this column here and this column here represents actual expenditures. When I say audited, that means that these numbers here were audited by the Auditor General or our private, not private, but our auditors that we are required to have by the state, and they have put their signed signature on it saying that our financial statements were correct. Unaudited are the ones that right now, the auditors are here. So because of the timing of trim, we cannot wait for the auditors to complete their report. They typically complete the report in January, around that time, January or February, but I've got to do this before July. I've got to open schools. So with that, we have to recognize that it's unaudited until we receive the final audit report. A lot of times it's close, But we do have some final journal entries that need to occur between now and September. Even the auditors will tell us, this was not appropriate, you need to put it in this function, or, things like that happens. And we have to follow their directive. So this is our tentative budget. Like I said, there are areas that may look higher than the others because there are funds that are sitting there that will be redistributed throughout the year. And that is done through a budget amendment, which is reported to the board every month. All right. Are there any questions on this? And one more other thing. Keep in mind, this has every expenditure you can think of. So 5,000, it has all of our salaries, benefits, everything, any and everything you can think of under that function that represents instructional services.
If you don't mind, I don't expect it today, but some of these, a couple of them have a significant difference. If we could just get an idea of why.
Give me an example.
Okay, instructional and curricular development.
That
We have
is,
200,000 between the unaudited, and then to the tentative budget, it's another mill.
right, which one?
That would be
This one here, 6,300.
Mhm.
So from 4.6 to 5.6, that's about $1 million.
Right.
Do we know what those are?
Do we have an adoption this year?
Yes, we do.
Science?
Well, there's always an adoption because they go in cycles.
Right, that's why I'm wondering if this may be one of the adoption years.
So in all of those things, remember the cost of textbooks and adoptions every year that well, not just in this role, every year I've been an educator, they've gone up, and they're not getting cheaper. We haven't migrated to the digital platform yet, and even that stuff costs an arm and a leg. But those like everything else right now, we see it in construction, we see it with paper, we see it with all these things. Yeah, but the adoptions, and we're required by both state, the federal groups, different agencies to have this for this subgroup and this for this subgroup, and those weren't requirements before. So if that trend continues, and I expect it to, these expenditures relative to curriculum instruction will continue to grow.
Which would then follow up with the next item, which is an additional 600,000, and that would be staff training. And if you have a new adoption, you've got to have the training to do
Yes, ma'am,
adoption.
and not to go on a tangent, but, it's sideways on this discussion, but like if we come in and say, okay, we're going to address this subgroup, whatever, like ELL is a good example, right? Well, now the state or the federal government says we have to do X, Y, and Z we weren't doing before, and we need to do it in this number of schools, this many times a day, we're gonna monitor it this way. Well, that requires staff to train, staff to be put in place to do that, people to monitor that. Every time we get a new, remember, we never get a requirement taken off the plate. It's an additional requirement added to the plate. So as the plate becomes more full, we have more people that are required to do more things in order for us to stay in compliance.
Yeah, the majority of the expense, the increase in the 6,300 is really the contracted services. A lot of it, and again, 63 is instructional as well. The first 5 function codes are primarily dealing with the schools. And that 6,300 is related to all of the contracts that we have brought to the board or will bring to the board for approval. There are instructional contracts that were increased. So any of those contracts that we did have, the continuation of those contracts, if they were increased, that's where that increase came in. So that is why but we can get the details, specifically what represents that increase.
Yeah,
The
just- I bet it would be
specifics of
helpful
who they
after
are.
the 200 difference prior, just to clarify. I
Okay.
mean, we've got Board of Education, we want to ask about that.
Right.
Obviously, school admin has actually dropped, so it's probably in the category. And then you've got facility acquisition and construction, that's a significant increase. And we need to know, what's anticipated that's going to be done.
Oh, of course, yes.
So
And to-
7,300 school admin, is that salaries and benefits?
The school admin, it's a lot of other things, but it's the schools and the district. So the admin, these are all the principals, all the APs, all of those types of positions, as well as all of the contracts that the schools may have that they have submitted to the district.
Okay, so that is, but that is salaries and benefits?
Most of it is, and you'll see a breakdown of that, the what breaks down the $17 million. Well, it's really more of the object codes by the further dive into what makes up this number here, the 389. You'll see that in the next one.
So back to Ms. Clark's
Yeah, but
point.
will you tell me the functions again so we can make a note which
Yeah.
function she's interested in?
The 5,000, the 6,300, the 6,400 was mentioned, the 7,300,
You said 7100?
71, the school board,
And 74.
and 74.
So Dr. Legucco, when we have increases like this, I personally would like to see why
Okay.
in every category. Because I understand curriculum, we do adopt, I believe as Mr. Daly said, nearly every year.
Right.
And it's never gone down in price. However, my understanding of the new adoption this year was that we were able to do less. The last adoption, for instance, would have like huge workbooks. We were able to do, I guess, pick and choose theoretically, so it would not be, we were very careful in how we chose. So I guess I'm having the same question that Ms. Clark has, 1 million more.
Right.
When we carefully selected from this adoption,
Right.
which teachers are real happy about, by the way.
Okay.
But when we have increases, I honestly think that Ms. Clark's right. We need to see as a board why we have 5.6% increase, because there's never been a decrease on that side.
Never.
It's hardly-
And again, keep in mind, this
It's
is a
hardly ever a
budget.
zero either, so
Right. Yeah.
it would be really helpful to
I
understand
understand.
the increases to each category each year.
Keep in mind, we have, this presentation is primarily for the advertisement.
Yes.
So the next presentation will be on the 30th. I can have the specifics. This is our opportunity to say, okay, what else do you want in this presentation that we can present on the 30th at the public hearing that really discusses the budget. This is just a first glance of
Yeah, I
it.
understand that.
So, but yes, I
as you say,
understand
It's very
that.
hard to determine.
I understand
Like looking
that.
into your glass ball, right?
Yes,
Very
yes.
hard to determine, and when you have an understanding of how hard that is for you,
Yes.
it's just as hard to understand why every single thing goes up, so.
Well, and Ms.
No,
Hanson,
I
I was just
understand.
telling Ms. Clark too, I think we have to remember our allocations because we just added on a whole nother department.
Yeah.
And with that
Right.
is training and stuff. But I do agree,
But a
we
lot
should
of that
see
came
that,
from
hey,
separate funding.
this was because we added this department and this is because we had this
Yeah.
training. I like that breakdown and I do agree on that, but I think.
And I guess also,
I
if
will
the
add-
increase is from adding a department, I know that we got special funding for some of that, and so.
Yes, we used a combination of federal funds and general fund
Right.
to support. I think from the general fund perspective, it was almost $1 million to set aside that. We also did some, we also had some increases to the accelerated programs, so that was an increase. There are other increases that we had that I can actually, I'll tell you, at the next meeting, what we will have is not only will we have this, but I'll have the presentation will be longer than the 60 slides that I have, but I will add on specifically, I can do all the functions or I can do specifics, whatever you would like, I will provide that to you, because we do have that data. It's just a lot to put on here, so, but yes, we do have it. And we'll provide it at the public hearing. And I can send it to you before the hearing, if that's okay. Okay? You got it? Okay, all right. All right, so now we're going into the general fund. Okay, so you saw the breakdown by function code, but because we have so many cost centers, it's very difficult to put every single one. I'm hoping my final budget will have some sort of documentation that shows you the staffing at the school, each school, the amount of dollars that's generated by that school, and, you know, how are they spending their dollars. That's going to be another book, but that's going to be in September, so. Okay, so this is by object code, which is another deeper dive into the budget. And this represents all the schools, all the district cost centers. How many cost centers do we have? When I say cost centers, I mean locations. You know, so we have, what, about
43 schools.
43 schools plus several other cost centers. So we've got quite a lot of cost centers out there. At least I'd say more than about 60, 70 cost centers that we deal with every day, breaking down all of these types of expenditures. But as you can see, the salaries, the 100 represents salaries for every type of position that we do have. The positions are broken down by teachers, instructional and non-instructional. Instructional is even broken down even further by teachers, support, admin, those types of details. So it really digs really deep down into a lot of numbers. So it's hard to put all of that in one presentation unless you want to spend an entire day going over the details of everything. But this represents the total salaries that we are projecting right now. And this is just more contracted salaries. Okay, this does not include any other salaries other than, I mean, we did set aside, like I said, the $2 million for the terminal pay. But this is what, based on our system right now, this includes vacancies and everything, where we're saying it's going to be about $220 million that we're spending our dollars on. The 200 is going to be, represents benefits. It's FICA, Medicare, workers' comp, insurance, all of those things that we are required to pay for. Purchase services, again, talks about the 300, which represents 310, which is all contracted services, other purchase services, travel, what's 59? Communication, phone bills, rentals, all kinds of different pieces of that budget. Now, the 500 represents not only supplies, because you see that's a large number there, right? It is a large number. That's where the adoption is. This year's adoption, we're budgeting about $8 million total, but there's some roll forward from the prior year. So this number here includes encumbrances that were part of this year's budget, but we had to roll it forward, so it's part of this number now. An encumbrance is a purchase order that funds are set aside to support a specific item, and therefore, if it wasn't paid for this year, we have to roll it forward because it is an activity that was approved, and we've got to pay the bill when it does come in. Okay? Do we have any questions on?
Hard to believe material and supplies is
The
more
textbook
than double of capital outlay based on the.
Right, well, and I can tell you exactly what's in that one. The textbook adoption is about $8.7 million. The accelerated programs are in there as well, which is about $6 million. That's AP, Cambridge, IB, those types of programs. So the majority of that cost is that instructional material adoption for next year. Keep in mind, instructional materials used to be a categorical. It used to be set aside at the within the FEFB, meaning that it is a dollar value that was stated that this is how you are going to spend this set amount of dollars. Each year we receive about $3 million for this purpose. 2 years ago, the state, of course, rolled all those into the BSA, base student allocation, which means that we are required to still pay for this, still meet the compliance of the statute, but to take it out of our base dollars, which is basically our operating dollars. It was easier when they had it set aside because I knew I needed to spend it on this. Now I have to just pull from our operating dollars. Same with the classroom supply dollars. Not only did they change the value to $300, a set dollar amount, $300 every year, we would receive about maybe $6 $700,000 for our teachers. Now it's up to about $900,000, but it's part of the VSA. They rolled it into the VSA, so all of these are
But do
being
they,
paid.
do they still indicate exactly how much it's supposed to be per teacher or whatever?
2 years ago, when they decided to move it into the VSA, the language changed to where they said you will give no more than 300. Before, we were able to calculate a value to share it among the teachers based on the dollar values that we receive from funding. Now it doesn't matter. They said you will give a teacher $300. So, and that's where the increase came in, because we typically would give about $260. The calculation came around that. And now we have to give it to them. And the other value too is TSIA. TSIA was also a categorical, but it's no longer a categorical. And we must pay for that, set aside those funding, and that is about $16 million. So they took away the leverage that it was set aside. It was set aside that I can take those funds and only pay for this certain thing. Now I've got to decide, as a team, how are we going to pay for all of these other expenditures out of the operating dollars that they place. And I will tell you, the FEFP, which is the Florida Education Finance Program, really, when they said that they are going to disallow the categoricals, some of them, they placed it into the VSA. They said they increased the VSA base student allocation, which generates our general dollars. They said that they would give us enough money to support those changes. Well, I can tell you, by doing my calculations, it is not even close enough to cover these type of expenditures and the values, and they've increased it every year. So, so it's a struggle to try and balance this again, but we'll have more details on it. Are there any other questions on this slide? Okay, so we're moving on. Again, you can see this slide represents the salaries and benefits. The larger portion of our budget goes towards our people or salaries and benefits, and this includes everything in the general fund. Okay. Okay. This is just a summary page that just read what our beginning is. It's more like a balance sheet sort of. It's our beginning fund balance, our revenues, how much we're expecting in, our expenditures, and what our transfers in, and where we expect to be. This is where we are. Our fund balances are unassigned is where we are right now. Okay?
Dr. Zecco, do you know, I guess if I could add those two together, so we're around 75% salaries and benefits?
Yes. Yeah, I know, I usually put that.
That's lower than.
Yes, it is. Typically, we're about 80%. When you look at the actual expenditures, it'll go up a little bit because of whatever other expenditures that happen throughout the year that we're paying for, extra hours, extra.
Well, I think it's a reflection of the inflation that we're dealing with.
As well, yes.
Gasoline for the buses, and that's a much higher percentage, so
Yes.
it's gonna reduce the.
Okay, this is just a historical view of the fund balance. I like to show this slide to show we are striving towards that 5%, but we'll get there one day. Hopefully next year. And again, what fund balance represents is that emergency fund that should anything happen catastrophically, such as hurricanes. We do live in Florida, and we have experienced those types of things. Those funds are there to help support some of the activities that may happen. It's not a lot, but it is something.
So there's a lot of districts that have higher than 5%.
Yes.
Is that because, I'm not sure, some as high as 13,
Yes.
14, 18% fund balance? Is that because they live in hurricane areas? Is that because, How are some people able to have such a high fund balance then?
Well, I will tell you, from my perspective, it just depends on multiple things. Before, several years ago, I would say maybe before COVID, a lot of districts were struggling as well. They were trying to build up their fund balance. They were way low. I mean, there were times, it's always an up and down. After COVID, of course, we got all that influx of the ARA funds, the CARES funds, the ARP funds, the different additional funds from the federal government. A lot of the school districts, or my peers that I've been around, what they've done is, again, they have taken some of those dollars and set it aside and used it to help build their fund balance.
Okay.
But what we did is we spent our dollars based on the directive that we were given. We didn't try to help our fund balance. We spent it on the purpose of what it was for. But a lot of the districts that I know of, not only are they not only are they hurting because they paid for a lot of positions out of their dollars, they also, on the other side, they did take a lot of it and to try to build up their fund balance. So that is why. The other thing too
So
is,
some people took the extra monies and put it into a spendable, like an employee benefit or dollar salary. And then that money was taken away, so they're hurting because they don't have that money any longer to pay for those salaries.
right.
And then other people at some point made a decision to maybe put it somewhere else.
Put it aside in fund balance
The
and
extra
hold on
money's
to
aside.
it, or buy up salaries and benefits so it reduces your expenditures in general fund and made a fund balance higher. Or,
All right, thank
and
you.
another reason too, again, is the first statement that you said. It's depending on their community and what is needed. You take the Panhandle. They have a large fund balance because they're growing so much, number one, and they have their tax base is very high. Key West, they have no area to build, but their tax base, I will tell you, remember I talked about the state funding versus the local tax funding? The Key West is one of the few states, I think it might be the only state, that receives 98% of their local tax to support their education.
Yeah.
So it's their funding helps us as a school district to increase our state funding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was going to say tax base,
Yeah.
because, I mean, people who live, for instance, in Sarasota County,
Definitely, they have a
they've
large
got more
amount
money
of
than
dollars.
God.
And they have more of a
Look at
population
St.
that
John's
is
right
more.
next door. I mean, their tax base is huge in comparison.
It's still a
to
percentage.
ours.
Yes,
We're
yeah.
still talking about a
Yeah.
percentage.
But
It's
that's-
relative
that's
to
where
the
they-
size of the district as well, or the county.
They
It's
pay those
relative to
taxes.
that size. You take ours as a small or medium, now we are considered a medium. 9 years ago, we were considered a
Yeah.
small district.
Mhm.
And, so it just depends on each year how it changes, the dynamics of that community. And the growth that's affecting it. Okay, so like I said, I broke out the 1 mil so that the taxpayers can see how we're actually spending our 1 mil. There's not a lot of activities in the 1 mil, other than it's because of the resolution that was adopted, it's specific to how we are to spend those dollars. So the first one is the instruction. Like I said, the $2 million is in the resolution that says that we will take at least $2 million and support the health insurance program. So that's where I placed it in the 5,000. When we do take the funds throughout the year, what will happen, and typically we'll do it at the end of the year because it's a one-type transaction. But what I will do at that point, and that's where you'll see the change in the function codes, I will then disperse this $2 million among all of this because it supports the entire district. Because the resolution says we will take $2 million to support the health insurance program. Everyone takes the health insurance program, no matter what category you fall into. So that is how we are supposed to report on the health insurance transition, the transfer. Oh, the expense, I'm sorry, it's not a transfer. Facilities and construction, 7,400. It is 12.0. Part of the resolution states that we will spend those dollars with hardening our schools, provide safety and security opportunities for our schools. And these are several projects that are attached to this $12 million. And, you know, those projects are similar to the 1.5 mil. And I believe the operations department has a breakdown on, and Bryce, I see is over there. She can identify specifically how this $12 million will be spent. Do you all would like to hear from Bryce at this point? Anybody?
Let's hear from Bryce.
We do have the EFP attached, and we will do a presentation on that on the 30th, but wanted to give it to you now so you could review it, and if you have any questions between now and the 30th, we can certainly answer those and present on those. If you go to the back part of our EFP, and it's attached on the computer, it does have all of our projects listed, and on the far right column, we have every fund source that we plan to use on that project. So you'll see if it's LCIF or Mill Fund or Ed First to answer any of those questions. Now, I know it comes up a lot. What else could we possibly do to harden or add to our schools to make them safer? I want people to keep in mind that we do have 43 schools, 6 million square feet. A lot of our schools, 75% of them are 20 years or older, with some of them being almost 100 years old. So imagine, you know, your own house. It's never you buy the house and then you never do anything to it. It's a constant maintenance cycle. So when you talk about fencing, it's almost something where you end up doing all the schools and then you come back around and it's, okay, we've got to replace, or things have been damaged in storms. Cameras, when you talk about technology, it's the same type thing. You do all the schools, you come back around, the technology has gotten better, we upgrade, replace cameras get damaged in storms as well. Door and window replacements, with as many schools as we have, you can imagine how many doors and windows there are, and how old they are in some of our almost 100-year-old schools. Those are projects that are also included in the mill, door and window replacement. The panic alert, that's Alyssa's alert, that's an MSDA requirement. And you guys all approved that before and have seen that. We're currently implementing that in our schools now. And as you know, that's an expensive cost as well. I know with technology, a lot of people think everything is wireless now. There's no wires. Why is it so expensive? But you know, there's a lot of infrastructure ahead of those projects. Go ahead.
Not to interrupt you, but just because you're on that topic, have we translated or communicated to our administrators that it was part of a requirement that we purchase that, which we didn't have to purchase that specific one, but it was part of it, and why we did it, because it was a all-in-one system? Because I've had administrators asking, it's being installed and they have no idea, and even the employees had no idea what the heck it was and what was happening.
We've had meetings with all the principals on it,
To date.
whether or not they've communicated that out to everybody on campus. As far as how detailed it is, I'm not sure, but we have communicated with all the administrators and they're getting trained on it, and their staff is getting trained on it. And any of those systems that are going in this summer will have teacher training at the first week of teachers.
I just wanted to make sure that we communicated, because a lot of them were wondering why we wasted all of this money for this, and once
I would love to know,
what it was and why they were there, then they understood.
So we did meet with all the schools that are currently getting them installed. So if there's any other questions, specific person in their school that you would like me to reach out to, I'd be happy to clarify for them.
Which probably now, this was like 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm
maybe-
surprised. I mean, we met with all the administrators and had a training on it.
Actually, it was way first year. I'll look back. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure that we communicated that so that they understood that we didn't just decide to put this fancy new system within our
Correct.
schools for no reason.
Sure, yeah, and any other questions, that was, audio enhancement, and he came and presented at, one of the workshops. We can certainly, put that link out there for his presentation, if they wanna see, from him what the system all does, if they have any additional questions, if they wanted to.
This is actually the end of my time, we're not.
Okay, I'll check with you
But anyways,
on this
we'll talk
one.
offline.
And again, the badge access with House Bill 1473, that's another initiative that'll be coming out. And again, it's, right now we have the badges for single point of entry at the front of the schools. We're trying to expand those to the exterior doors on all the campuses. And again, with 43 campuses and all those doors, it's just something that's gonna take time. So, mill projects are constantly ongoing, and if anybody has any more questions about the projects we do, please reach out to me. And again, we try to put them on the right side of the document for what we plan to do this year.
Thank you for that update, because I've been getting questions about, well, now that the sheriff's office is in charge of security, we no longer need this one mill. And that is so far from the truth, it's not funny, because we're using this one mill, first of all, to pay the sheriff's office and the county commission to be able to use them, but also then the hardening. And going back to the Alyssa's button, I mean, we've always had, I shouldn't say we've always, but I remember using the voice.
Yes, we have to comply with it. We have an app on the phones and the
Right.
computers.
How many schools are getting the hardening at this point? I mean, getting that project put in?
Well, I'd rather not say
Got it, not a
specifically.
That's a
but-
security issue, I
Yes.
understand. But, okay, so it's getting into all schools eventually?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's correct.
That's all I need.
And the only thing I want to add is if you can share more regarding the buildings that are being constructed to replace those portables, what we're doing, because that was a big reason why many people voted for the one mill.
Oh, sure.
So, I think if we can clarify that, of course, I just drove by the new high school in St. John's and saw these brand new portables, which
Yeah,
shocking for them to have to go to.
they're trying to keep up with the growth.
Yeah,
We have 2 schools on 1 campus almost.
yeah, because obviously we're not, the cost, we know everything's doubled,
Right.
but, we've still got way too many, and that's what people want to hear about.
I agree.
So thank you.
We do
for
still
that.
have portable reductions
Yep.
heavily in our plans.
Sounds like we could sell some portables to St. John's County.
I would love to. I've offered them before. I said, we've got plenty, so I'll keep trying.
Thank you.
So as we continue on, thank you guys. Okay, so this is a breakdown by the object codes, meaning the salaries and benefits of where our dollars are going. The salaries right now, last year, of course, we had our own officers. This year, we only have the guardians. So the guardians, this is their salaries and benefits, salaries that represent their, the guardians. The 200 are the benefits, of course. And this 200 is actually the $2 million that is generated from this account. And of course, then it is also part of, it's a transfer into, again, this is all part of general fund. But I have to represent, this is the $2 million that's in the 1 mil. Remember when I said there's $2 million down here that we had as an expense? Let me go back so everyone understands. Up here, $2 million out of the function at the high level. Now here, where is it in the object codes? It's the salary, it's the benefits. Here's the $2 million. Okay? But when you look at the ad, it includes this fund and the general fund. So you add those two together, and that's where you get the top and the bottom. Purchase services is the 300. It represents all our contracts. This includes this year it was the contracts with Town of Orange Park, Town of Green Cove, City of Orange Park, and then of course this includes the sheriff's contract as well as those other 2 contracts. It also includes our charter schools. This includes our charter schools as well. Energy service, this is gasoline and stuff that they use, materials and supplies, you can see. The capital outlay is to 12.3 million that Bryce just spoke about.
And the dispatching is also in the purchase services?
Yes, all of it. It's, purchase services is considered our contractual services, which is really part of that identification. Okay. This is a summary again, again, our beginning fund balance. We rolled about $8.5 million. We plan on generating about $19.6 million, which represents 96% of the 1 mil. And we expect to utilize we have about $28 million that we'll use in the 1 mil. We will spend approximately $24.9 million. And we expect to have about a fund balance of about $3 million. 3.3 million.
Total?
Total. Okay?
And that's like part of the 5% or whatever that goal that you're trying to.
Yes.
Sure.
This is more of a detailed breakdown of what represents that $24 million that you saw down here, right here, the expenditures, which is this number here.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you go back one more slide, that slide?
Oh,
Summary statement and revenues?
okay. The summary.
There you go. Yes. So ending fund balance of June 30th in 22-23 was $9 million.
Right.
And that, if I recall, this is just from the 1 mil. And the intention, it was intentional, so that we would have money that we could carry over to the following year, each year.
Right.
Due to the cost, due to expenses, whatever, just in case. Our fund balance is like our savings account.
Correct.
And when we first asked the community to pass this 1 mil, we did it intentionally. We said we will be saving or working to save some money so that at some point in the future, if this is not passed by the community, we will have some fund to fall back on. And so you're saying that this year we'll only have $3 million to put in?
Yes, as far as trying to support any continuation of services, we would need to really look at how we're spending those dollars. And, 3.3 is not enough to cover any kind of continuation of services. So again, if at any reason the taxpayers choose not to pass this mill, the district or the team, the board, would need to look at how are we going to absorb the cost of the primary purpose, which is really the safety and security of our schools. So how are we going to absorb that cost in the general fund, the operating fund? So basically, we need to generate around 10 to 12, maybe 13 million. We will then not have the funds to do this piece here, but we are required to have the officers at every school. It is statutorily required. So therefore, that is a priority over our capital outlay or hardening of schools. So therefore, if the bill does not pass at any given time, the school district, the board, the cabinet members will need to discuss how is the district going to absorb at least that much money to support safety and security. And that is a hard decision to make because it's a lot of money, and that means cutting staff because of the fact that the majority of our funds are funded by salaries and benefits.
I have a question. What, how much funding does the state give for safety and security?
The safe schools, how much, hold on, I'll tell you right now. Hold on.
Because if I remember correctly, I thought we said it was around 12 million.
No, The state gives us a portion of dollars, which is called Safe School. It is still a categorical, and they give us $3.4 million this year. This is just projected. It is dependent on whether or not we generate enough funds based on our enrollment. So right now, we are projecting based on the 40,000 kids, the calculation says that we will receive about $3.4 million in Safe School dollars.
And that was set up basically to cover the SROs when it was a requirement. Correct.
That and some of the other expenditures such as, what is those other positions that we're paying for? Guardians. No, not the guardians, out of the Safe Schools funds. The counselors.
Oh, like the deans and
The deans and-
bullying and.
Mental health.
No, mental health, there is a set aside for mental health.
Okay.
But it's primarily, the Safe School does have a component of it where we are required to set aside X amount of dollars to support the counseling of our students.
Counseling.
The deans at our schools, the
Like when there's bad behavior.
bad behavior, we don't want to say bad behavior, but I know.
The deans, that makes it.
Yeah, those types of expenditures. So part of the statute requires us to do some, it's not mandatory, but requires. So right now, we are using some of the Safe Schools to support some of those positions.
Do you have a breakdown of purchase services,
Yes.
Object 300?
Yes.
So you're saying that the almost $3 million was Green Cove Springs?
Okay, I can tell you specifically, the, part of the 300 we're paying, well, this was the year before, but this year it's similar probably. Clay Med, which is, that's HR, I believe. What is Clay Med? Medical Clay Med. That is a testing that's done. That's a contract. Field, these are the contract services that we had. Field,
In the 300?
yes.
The
Field is the contract ones, the 310.
Is
There
that
are,
for the 1 mil?
Yeah, but this is 1 mil.
yes, this is for the 1 mil, yeah. What makes up the 9.4 million? City of Green Cove is about 372,000, I believe. I think that's an item that's going before the board.
How much should we pay for the transition services? Like
That's 1
$2.9 million included the transition services.
Yes.
We had to pay that in the 23-24
Yes.
fiscal year.
Right, yeah, in the 23-24, the $2.9 million represents the transition of 1.1 million to the sheriff's office. So that's why that number is so high compared to the prior year. That's part of it. There were other types of expenditures in there. If you take the 1.1 million away from the 2.9, that leaves the different operating type of contracts that we did have, which was City of Green Cove, which was about 372,000. Town of Orange Park, which was 300,000. We had, we contracted, I guess, for oil changes and whatnot for, it's called GT Distribution. We spent about 4,000 there. Software programs was about 6,000. Charter schools, 692,000. So the majority of all of the expenditures in the 2.9 million, 1.1 transition, and all those others closely adds up to the 2.9 million.
But we're not going to be paying for those software services anymore because it's already included with the police department.
It's part of the $9.4 million.
Right, and then we're not gonna have to pay for, what was the other?
Dispatching.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't feel like
employee
is being
benefits.
deducted. It's already
Well,
included.
that's because we're in this category, but we have to recognize that it does lower expenses in other areas.
Right.
Yep.
So even though that's a shocking sticker price,
The 9.4.
we're saving in other places.
Well, is there a breakout for the 9.4?
Yes.
Can we, you don't have to read it to me, but
Oh, the oil.
I will provide it at the public hearing, so everyone can see exactly what makes up the 9.4. And I'll do it for every function other than the salaries and benefits, because we know what those salaries are. It's for the Guardian
Yes.
program, And also, we have a locksmith, I believe, that we're paying for out of the cost. And then the benefits, again, I told you, it's the 2 million that's part of the cost, the resolution. And the rest of it is the standard FICA, Medicare, and those types of expenditures. But I will break down what the 300 is. The 400 is really the gasoline, the energy, those kinds of things. The materials and supplies are those that the Guardian program may utilize, and I can provide a detail of that if you all need, of the 88. The capital outlay, Bryce did give you an overview on that. What I will do is include that page that she shared with you in the presentation so that everyone can see exactly how those funds are being used. And the other expense, the 4,600, is really 700, which might be minor expenses that maybe.
So for me,
I'll
the
give you a
best thing
detail.
that you could do is an extended 1 mil fund, so.
Yeah, I will do that.
So everybody can see exactly how we're spending that money.
Absolutely, I will do that. It'll be in the 30th, which is the public hearing, which is really where you adopt the tentative budget. And we adopt the millage rates once it's advertised, okay?
And this millage will be on the August ballot or the November?
November.
November.
Well, you'll get the notice. Well, it's not on the ballot itself. No. What happens is that once we advertise, we notice the property appraiser. Then once it's adopted, then the local tax office does their thing with the trim. It's a process that we go through. And then what happens is a mail-out goes out to everyone stating, here's what your tentative property taxes could be.
No, I mean the 1 mil, the additional 1 mil. When did the citizens vote on that again?
Not for another 3 years.
She wanted
Not for
to-
another 3 years.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, 3 years, right? This is we're going into the second year, it'll be
It'll be
another 2 years.
It'll be 4, total of 4.
6, 5 years.
2026.
Yeah.
2026.
Yes, in November.
And it's not on the primary ballot, it's on the general.
General, it
General
will be
ballot.
on the general. And at that time, we will need to have an audit, because that's one of the requirements, to have an audit prior to going out for those dollars. I think that's one of the statutory requirements now.
has to be-
And it's the November ballot.
And audit has to be a year prior.
But it has to be done before you can take it out to the public.
And I'll just comment real quick. Obviously, this is a budget number, and I know the Clay Today had an article and it talked about it with the sheriff's office. If we went over the 6 mil, then it would have to come back to the school board for approval. But we also know if they go under, those funds come back. And secondly, the idea that I love is that we're at full capacity. We were not at full capacity before. So however you want to take that or look at it, I'm glad that everything is covered as it should be. So
What do you mean full capacity? What are you
we've got every
referring to?
employee for every school
Yes,
at all times.
full-time.
You're talking SROs?
Yes.
SROs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of substituting
All
before.
right. I'm going to go fast now because those were the 3 areas that are really, the general fund and the mill is really more, I think, and I'll go into the capital once we get to it, okay? So the next slide really is our debt service. Oops. Okay, we're done. We're into food service. Oh, if only. Okay, come on, sorry. Going too fast. Wanted to finish, I guess. Where am I? Okay, all right. We're into our debt service. Like I said, part of the funds that generate from the other funding provides the support for our debt service, meaning our loans. This is our loans that we took out to support the construction of new buildings or expansion of new buildings. So, right now, we have 3 leases, or 3 loans, I should say. One is the racetrack bond. We've had this for multiple years. It is supported by the state. It is funds that we do get from the state, and we are required to pay it back. You'll see the schedule, so you'll see when it will be paid off. The COP, Certificate of Participation, remember I told you we went to, just recently, we combined all of our other debt into one, as well as we took out some additional funding to support an expansion of 2 of our junior high schools. So with that, this year, our payment is $4.6 million, which is really close to what we would have paid with the other 2 debt that we did have. And on top of that, we were able to generate about a little over $30-something million to do the expansion of our 2 middle school, junior high schools. Okay? And then, of course, our bus lease, it's about $1.6 million that we will be paying on. So the total debt is about $6.4 million, which is part of that other financing sources that I told you will come from capital.
Dr. Legutko, will we have, say the interest rates should, God willing, come down in the near future, would we have the opportunity to then bond more in order to build more?
Absolutely. This interest here is already extended. This is the interest that we're paying on those debts. And yes, what happens is as our debt goes down, our financing capacity increases. And then, yes, in a couple of years, if we want, actually, our debt ratio is pretty good right now still, because we're still within that small, the value of what it was the prior, before going into the new COPS, before combining all of them. So
I know
basically we consolidated and got more money.
Right, and I know the county commission bonded one of their revenue streams in order to pay for a lot of the road construction that we're seeing today. They did that
Right.
years ago.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just wondering, at what point would it be financially beneficial for us to bond some of what we get through different revenue sources in order to afford things in the future?
Yes, we always have that opportunity, just like we did when we went out for the COPS, this most recent COPS issue. It just depends on the interest rates at that time. Even this, we can refinance again.
Right.
If we wanted to. So if there's a lower interest rate, we can actually refinance this and still maintain. But again, it's just like anything else. You're refinancing. Do you want to maintain the same amount of timeline in paying it off, or do you want to extend it? And depending on that percentage, that is where you would decide whether or not you want to get more funds to support some of it. But yes, you have the opportunity to take out debt as long as you have the capacity to do it. Okay, so, all right, so basically, remember I told you about the debt that we had before. We had about, all these 3 we combined to one, to where it became the 69 million. This is the most recent one that we did. And basically this chart just shows you, here's what our original principles was and is for our current debt. And then this is what's remaining to be paid. So we've got, I believe, about maybe 2 payments left on this one, the bus lease. Yeah. But you see, we paid off these 3 loans here by combining it with this loan. Does that chart make sense to everybody? Okay. I just wanted everybody to see what our annual payment will be for 24-25.
So our total debt is 143 million
Yes.
total?
Yes, this, and this added together. But what we're responsible for right now, well, this money comes in from the state for us to pay, all right? This is where it gets transferred from capital to help pay for the debt, and this also gets transferred in from capital to pay for the debt.
But
And
the
our payment
remaining is 143, or is it 52?
Oh, this is I'm sorry.
That's the
This is the original debt that we had.
Right.
Since then, we now have 52.079 in remaining principal. Remaining interest is 21. 512 is 7, about 70, 2113, about 73, 74 million dollars in debt right here.
So our total debt is
It's
73, not the 140.
No, the 143 is
Was
the
our
original
original.
principal. It's
Okay.
just the principal though, not the interest. It's just the original principal that we borrowed. This added to this, which is the remaining interest, those two numbers added together is what our current debt is overall, and then this is the annual payment for 24-25. Of course, there are bank fees and things, other fees that's associated with debt, but. Okay, can I move on? This is just like the balance sheet. Like I said, it's what our revenues are coming in to pay our debt, our and expenditures, the transfer in, and that's what it is. Okay. Okay. Here's the payment schedule. So each year, we will be paying off on the 2029 is the last year we will pay off that most recent cups that we just took. These are the different ones. So the bus lease, we do have 2 years, this year and the following year. So 1 more year after this year. The special act bond, it would be paid off in 2022. The expansion of the junior highs, this is what, the 47 million. Total interest is about 21, total debt. Again, this is just a breakdown of the total of what it looks like for our district. So you can see our debt capacity is pretty small, so we do have, our debt ratio is pretty good for right now, should we need to borrow additional funding. But what's pledged for this, what's pledged for these payments are the capital funds. So the more you take away from the capital, the less we have to do any other construction or any type of activities, so. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Through the chair. And I assume with the 20 new buses that we're looking at needing to purchase based on the age, that we've looked at not just a purchase, but the lease option and going the best route.
I will defer that question to Bryce as it relates to the buses and what they've discussed about the purchase of it. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what how the leases are running today based on.
Yeah, the purchase of the 10
The
buses.
20 buses
20
that we've looked at both leasing and outright purchase.
Yes, yeah, we're just finishing up the lease that we're doing now, but it's in our best interest.
We have 2 more payments this year and next year. So as it relates to the purchase at the end, I do believe we get the option to purchase these.
Yes.
I think leasing has gotten a little high recently, so that's what.
Yes.
So we didn't do like a lease to own thing, we just leased them? Is that a thing?
No, we leased
It was a
to
lease
own.
purchase.
Okay.
No, we did the 100 bus purchase, I think it was in 2017.
That's what I thought we did, okay.
Yeah, and that was to get the 100 buses. So we've kind of gone through that cycle, and that was to get the air-conditioned buses, because we didn't have air conditioning.
I was going to point that out, the air
On the
conditioning
bus,
buses.
yeah, so we bought like 100, a lot of 100 to get the air conditioning, and then, if you look back at our plans previously, it was always 20 buses a year to keep up, pretty much, and as we grow, that's gonna increase as well.
So Ms. Ellis, I see we have 2 more payments here on this bus lease. In consideration of the scheduling, the new school start schedule, other counties have started to transition into that and have needed more buses because the kids are all traveling around at the same time because their high school won't be starting so early. Will that be, you think, part of that consideration then next year?
Yeah, we've already been working with transportation diligently behind the scenes to figure out what we need to do next year, but we do have, we'll be bringing it to the August board, is the purchase of more buses. for this coming year. 20 buses is what we plan to purchase this year.
Because I know
We
there's
just got
increase in buses will be needed for the new schedule.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they have a rotation schedule with the buses, so to try to keep them on the road as long as possible, keeping up with statutes as well, but, any of the buses that run the long routes will be swapped to do the short routes, just to try to balance the mileage on those. So they do a really good job in transportation, extending the life of those buses.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll get into the capital funds. I'll give you an overview. The capital funds, we do get state dollars, some, well, not very, very many, much dollars. The majority of our dollars are generated from the property tax, the 1.5 mil, and of course the sales tax dollars, and impact fees. So those are really the three funding source for our capital funds. And associated with it is, of course, the interest that's with the funds that are collected. State revenue, we do get some CONDS dollars, capital outlay and debt service. It's from our motor vehicle license tax. It's state dollars that we do get in, and it's been steady about the 1.5 million. The charter school capital outlay, this is an in and an out. It comes to us, but then we turn around and we send it out to the charter schools. Sometimes we do get a facilities grant from the state, but at this point we don't have that information, so I can't put it in there. If we do get something between now and September, it will be reflected in that budget presentation.
We didn't get one in 23, 22, 23 at all?
No. Okay. So I'm going to move on. These are the expenditures. These are the categories that for the capital funds that we are required to account for. So you can see here's how we spend our dollars. Primarily, the majority of it is going out to our schools for building and fixed equipment and the remodeling and renovations. Okay. Are there any questions on this chart?
We're buying books again. Can we point that out?
Yes.
17.
Million.
We're buying books again.
Well, part of that cost rolled in from the prior year. We opened a new school, so we purchased the books from that.
Just wanted to say that out loud.
I know, yeah. All right, I'm going to move on if there are no questions. Okay. Again, this is the balance sheet. It shows the money coming in, the money we had left over. You can see we have a large fund balance, and that is because not all the projects were completed. So we roll it forward. Our revenues is about 64. We're going to have about 148 million to work with. Our appropriations are about 125. Our transfers about 12.2. Overall, we'll have about a $6.8 million fund balance. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move further so that we can finalize this thing. That's a lot. Okay, this slide just represents the funding that's going to our charter schools. We have 4 charter schools, and we have the 2 DJJ sites, which are contracted. So part of that contracted number includes the DJJ sites. And these enrollment numbers here are just projected. Right now, we don't know if these numbers will change. It could change in the third calculation when we do receive it from the state, their enrollment numbers. So it's a projection. The charter schools receive part of our FEFP dollars, which is our state, our dollars from the FEFP, the state. Again, they get a proportionate share based on their enrollment. They receive the $1 million because of, and the Florida Cyber, even though they are a cyber charter, meaning a virtual charter, they still receive a portion of these funds because of the fact that we said it was for operational expenditures in our resolution. So they are required to receive a portion of those dollars. The capital LCIF, the law requires us to give them at least 20, last year it was 20%, this year I believe it's 40%. But the St. John's Classical does not receive it because they have to be in service for 2 full years before they receive their funding. So each year the percentage goes up until they start receiving 100% of their FTE. Sales tax, they receive a proportionate share, and because it's for construction or those types of activities, the virtual charter does not receive any of those dollars because they are a virtual charter school. Okay? And of course, the PACE and AMI or the DJJ sites, they receive their proportionate share of the FEFP, which includes an allocation for DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, which is part of our fund. Okay? So I'm going to move on. Okay, special revenue. Special revenue, and I'm going to go fast now, okay? These are...
You promised that earlier.
I know, but this is so interesting, don't you all get it? It's beautiful. All right.
The love of numbers.
Sleepless nights. This is sleepless nights. Our food and nutrition program is accounted for under this fund. Special revenue are our 420, which is our Title I, our regular special revenue funds. We did have those extra funding from CARES, CRISA, and ARP, and of course, that's where we have to account for these funds. Okay, so I'm going to go really fast. Revenues for the food service, I know I'm trying. Revenues for the food service, this is just food service. Susie Glover does a very good job with her programs at supporting meals to our students and adults. So here's their revenue and where they receive the dollars from. This comes from the federal government or the National School Lunch Program. And again, these are the dollars that they receive. The majority of it comes from the federal National School Lunch, about $12.5 million. That's what I'm going to say for that one. All right, we're going to move fast, I promise. Here's how we break it down. Salaries primarily, the majority of her cost is in food, right? Food service, food. We buy food, okay? And you have an opportunity to look at this in depth, and you can ask questions, call me, and if you have any questions. Okay. So here is their fund balance, their balance sheet, their fund balance. They brought in $9 million. They're going to bring in 22.6. They'll spend about 24.7, and their fund balance will be about 6.8. It equates to about 3%. That 3%, their requirement from the National School Lunch Program requires that they maintain at least three months of operating expenditures. That is within that 3 months. I mean, that fund balance is within the value that she needs in order to meet that requirement. Okay? So she does have a requirement for fund balance as well. And I say she, food service. All right, now special revenue. Again, these are the different programs that we currently have. A lot of these numbers will change because right now we really don't have the final applications from the state. The different departments submits their application to the state. They have to submit it by June 30th, and then they go through a rigorous review at the Department of Education, and then they send us the award notification. They send us the award notification. Once we receive that, we will adjust the revenues of what we expect to get for each of these grants. So this is all an estimate. Part of it includes the salaries and benefits that are being paid by these grants. So we've got to, these are the positions that were approved in the allocation plan. Okay? Here's how they're spending their dollars. Again, the salaries are primarily the higher number, and again, it is all the instructional positions at schools that we do have. Okay, so there we go. All right, trying to go fast. Here's the function view of where the funds are being spent. You can see the higher percentage, 69%, is being spent in instructional services, 61% and 63%. That's the majority of where our funds are being spent. The 7,200, even though this is so low, that's going to go increase because 7,200 is the indirect cost that's associated with those grants. And of course, it'll increase once we have the final numbers from the state. Okay? Well, a lot of these numbers will change in the September board meeting. Okay, between now and September. Sorry, I'm going fast. Okay. Here is where we receive, we do not have a fund balance for this fund because in federal funds, we do not get the revenue until we expend the funds. So basically, the general fund supports it until we draw the funds down from the state. So there is never a fund balance. If we do have a fund balance, there is a problem and we are cited on that. We have to pay a penalty. So we can only draw down the funds that we spend. Okay? All right, I'm losing my voice. Okay, the 44X are the ERA, ESSER, and ARP funds. Here you can see over the, since fiscal year 2020, we collected $70.3 million in additional funding from ESSER and all those different, these are the different projects that we had. A lot of them are specific to what the name of the project, such as literacy reading tutoring. We can only spend the funds on K-3 reading literacy tutoring. Civics, we can only spend the funds on that area, in that area. The IDEA, of course, is a summer learning camp specifically for summer school and those types of things. So, in 2021, we started spending the funds. 22, we spent this much. 23, we spent this much. 22, 23, 24, 25, we have $2 million left over. These grants all close in some of them have closed. Where you see nothing there in the balance for 24, 25, we've already closed out those grants. What's remaining is just a little bit of funds that's going to support our summer school for July and some tutoring that's going on right now. So that's really what those dollars represent. But by September, it will be all done. And then the fund begins. Because then they audit all of those expenditures. So, all right. This is just a breakdown of how we're spending the ESSER funds, the remaining $2 million. You can see where the funds are being spent, which is primarily, like I said, instruction, which supports the summer school and any tutoring that we do have going on currently. Here's the breakdown by object code, so you can see it's primarily salaries and benefits. Not even that much, really. All right, so here's the balance sheet. I'm going to go real fast. Okay, these funds here, to the end, believe it or not, these two funds that I'm about to speak about, the internal service funds, are really part of the general fund. So it's really just for information purposes right now because it's already accounted for in the general fund. But I am breaking it out. The liability insurance is one of the different internal funds. As you can see, this fund represents the cost of our property and the different types of liability and workers' comp that we are required to support. This is just a quick breakdown of how it's being spent. We generate some revenues from some of our transfers in. We charge for some of their services, so like workers' comp, one of the benefits. That is where some of those dollars are going into to support this program. The internal service, health insurance, 712, that fund is our self-insurance program, where we as a district decided that we will have our own self-insurance program. Right now, these are the salaries and benefits. The majority of the cost is the purchase services, which is the contracts with United Healthcare, who else? Humana.
Express Scripts.
Express Scripts. All of those contracts that we have to maintain our health insurance program. Here's a balance sheet of where we are. We are expecting about 4.7 million in our fund balance. We are required statutorily, no, actuarially, we are required to have enough dollars to support our claims once they come in. And we do have a lot of claims, workers' comp, we have a lot of workers' comp claims, and some liability cases that we bring before the board under a shade or something.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay, we're at the end. Wow. All right, the next step really is for you, the board, to go through the process and approve my advertisement for the proposed millage rates and the tentative budget for 24-25. This advertisement will appear in the July 25th, 2024 newspaper, Play Today. You will also set the public hearing for July 30th to adopt the millage rate and approve the tentative budget. And then we have another date that you need to set, which is the final public hearing for September 12th to adopt the final millage and the budget for 24-25. Do I have
I have a question.
questions?
The next meeting, is that the one where we read all the numbers off?
Oh, yes,
The next two
Okay.
the next two.
Okay, so my other question is, you said that you have more slides to go over, and we're going over all of this again at the next one?
If you choose to, for me to do that, yes.
Well, the two areas that you wanted, that we wanted
I can.
additional information on.
So, well, that's what I'm saying,
You got the numbers, the
Yeah.
individual numbers.
do we
and
have to
then
go
the
over
title
all of
number.
this again? Can we just go
I need
over what we
to,
requested?
all I will need to do at the next meeting is really go over the millage to reinforce those numbers, the first three slides, really just the millage, the two slides that we talked about. And then what I can do is minimize all of this into charts and graphs and a little wording, and then have the detail of what you request at that meeting. It's up to
I'm
you what
okay
you
with
would
that,
like.
but I don't know
What
if you
would
guys-
you all like?
I just don't think it's necessary to go and do this again. But I'm.
You want the Reader's Digest version?
Yeah.
I think
Well, I mean-
what we're hearing from the board is when you look at that right-hand column and there's like, most of the things are sort of in line with each other, and then you have a few that stand out.
Right.
Well, what's that attributable to, right? And
Right,
we
I will
certainly-
talk to them.
Right, all those things that we see every single day that become commonplace when you do the work a lot, isn't commonplace to those that don't do the work a lot. So I
Right.
think if we can, you and I can have a meeting with Mr. Brodsky and returns about what the explanation for the board members, so they can see why there's a proposal that's higher than it was, or out of concert.
Okay,
with
yeah, I
what
can
the
do that. We'll do
But I
a
also
summary.
don't, unless the board thinks differently, I don't think that we need to go through 66 slides again. I think we just kind of need to hit the highlights and.
Yeah,
Is there a way, and I don't
Don't
know,
know.
so forgive me for that, is there a way just to deliver that information to the board without having to go through an entire presentation again, like we sometimes, like get it to you ahead of time or something? I don't know if that's what you're wanting, but it sounds like that's something like
I'm
Mrs.
fine.
Skipper Johnson.
statutorily, I am required to talk about the millage again. That is something I have to do.
I just think like these
That's fine,
individual
but I
items,
think you have to,
object
yeah.
codes, right?
Oh, yeah, that piece, I did it for the boards, and for the public, so they can see the details of really how we're spending
I'll
those
get with
dollars.
Mr. Brodsky and
we can
get the
minimize
answers, like the reasons behind that.
Yeah.
And then see what's the appropriate way, mechanism that we can share that with you ahead of time so that you know what it is behind it.
Yeah, definitely.
The more detail on the 1 mil
Yeah.
is something that I would like to see.
Okay.
And then Ms. Clark had asked for more detail
On the
some of the
functions, we'll have
objects.
that, yeah. Well, we wrote it down, so
I've got
we'll
it.
prepare that and
It's a-
put it
Yeah, I
in.
mean, we want all of that. I was
Yeah.
just saying, I don't think that we need to hit that
So I
again
think
unless
to
you know.
Mr. Daly's point, is that something you guys feel like needs to be presented at the next meeting? Or is that something that could be just information emailed to the board because we requested that information?
I would personally like the
Yes.
1 mil to be presented
Presented.
because I know that there's a lot of question in the community.
I agree with
regarding
Ms.
that.
Bola.
Okay.
But on some of those other things, like relative to spikes in, you know,
Right.
cost of paper
That could
or
be stated,
instructional
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
those are things maybe I could deliver to the board and then we could present the 1 mil.
That doesn't, yeah.
Sounds
That's
good.
fine.
There are constantly
yeah.
prices
I
that go out that.
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to save you 66, or well, you said there's more, 100 and something slots.
Yeah,
So
if you want
I'm
me to do
just
the
trying to-
details.
There's 600.
Be careful what you ask for.
I know, well, I mean, like, this is the workshop, this is where we go into detail, that's fine. I can sit here and go through detail, I don't know, maybe it's.
So,
the
well,
others.
the other, the public hearing though, I mean, by law,
Yeah, whatever,
You have to go through
whatever's
certain
by law,
things.
but I don't
Right,
think 100
right.
slides is by
Yeah,
law.
the additional after the ad, really, I could have just done this and just presented the first 5 slides.
Right, but we
Right.
asked you for more.
Right, so the details.
That's what I'm saying. I want the
But
detail
at
of
the
the
work, at the
workshop.
actual hearing, I can just do the first 5 slides and the details of what you specifically asked
Correct.
for.
Correct.
And we can provide that to you. It doesn't have to be this long. Okay.
And we,
So Madam Chair, are we in agreement we'll do what's mandatory and then a detail of the 1%?
Mm-hmm.
1 mil.
Yep.
And we changed the final hearing from September 10th to September 12th.
Correct, yes.
So, because in the original paperwork, we had September 10th.
Right.
So I
trim
thought,
time,
just
yeah.
verbalize it. I know you sent that out to us,
Yes.
so.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Legato. I know this was hours and hours of intensive work for you and your
Yeah.
staff, and I know this is a busy time of year.
Awesome.
Thank
Yes,
you
I would
so
like to
much.
personally thank my team, and the 3 musketeers over here. They worked very hard on this, along with me, because, and no sleep. You can see the bags on my eyes. No, I'm just teasing. All right, smile a little.
Thank you, Dr. Legato.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is to review the educational facilities plan, but I think, Ms. Ellis, did you have anything to speak to for that, or you want to wait till next meeting?
Yeah, just real quick, for you guys to look at, before the next meeting. On page 21 is all the fund sources that we use for capital, and there's a definition and, categoricals on what each fund was used for, just, as a quick reference if you want to go there. The first portion of the, document is growth, and we will do a presentation on the growth and update you and the county as well on everything that's going on there. So yeah, if you look through this and you see anything that you would like more detail on before the June 30th meeting or for us to include in the presentation, we will do that.
Are we going to require everyone to drive down Sandridge Road for the full?
You have to get to the meeting that
Listen, I avoid that area.
Tell me about
Thank the
it.
flag,
We had
you love
vacation
that.
Bible school last week, and I had to drive that road 4 times every day. I needed
Oh,
blood pressure
no.
medicine by the end of it.
And the Rotary on 218.
All right, so we'll move on to the action part of our meeting. Our first item that we'll be voting on is to approve the advertisement for the 2024-2025 tentative budget and millages. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
A motion from Ms. Bola. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Clark. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is to adopt and approve the emergency adoption implementation of Clay County District Schools School Safety Policies 9.17, School Safety Requirements and Monitoring, 9.18, Threat Assessment Policy, and the district's Security and Response to Active Assailant Policy, which is confidential. So, Mr. Daly, did you have anything to add to that before we vote?
Just that there's been a number of changes, as you are all aware, with the statutorily and with the shift from the transition back to the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and all of that collectively, we wanted to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row, especially relevant to student safety, which I know is first in all of our minds, so that we could take care of that, and then we can come back in. We just need to adhere to the timeline, so it's similar to the budget.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
A motion from Ms. Hanson and a second. Second from Ms. Bola. Any discussion from the board? Any questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And last is the 2024-2025 Mental Health Assistance Allocation Plan. Mr. Daly, was there anything that you needed to speak to?
No, just that the state, does provide some supports for this because the requirements relative to student mental health, which touches on so many numbers of issues, has grown exponentially, really, even in the last 4 or 5 years since I've been in this role. And so in order to meet some of those requirements, we do have to take some action. Some of these things that we've done here, like even that we'll see later today, we've already done, but now we're being required to bring them forward in this fashion. But no, nothing out of the ordinary here. We just want to make sure that we adhere to the requirements given to us by the state.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
A motion for approval from Ms. Clark. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second from Ms. Hanson. Any discussion or questions from the board? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. I just want to reiterate, we did not have any members from the public here to speak to any items. Nobody had any comments to make. All right. Mr. Daly, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just that, obviously that was a lot, right, that we went through and tried to digest, but that team did work extraordinarily hard. Behind the scenes, you were absolutely right. I appreciate you commending them, and that takes a lot out of them. There's so many moving parts to the budget with an organization of this size, and you can see, the potential complications from all of the different funding sources, and you have state money and local money and federal money and all of that, and all the things, the various needs as they've grown, and that team does an exemplary job, and our partners at the state do a great job, and when the auditors come in, they're here to complement and support us, and so for all those people that make all of that work so that we can help children and help teachers help children, I thank all of you very much.
Mr. Blocker, anything from your office?
No, ma'am.
Okay. School board member comments, anything anybody wanted to add before we move on to our next meeting? All right, seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll take a